Today I'm going to show you how to use the technique that surrealists used called Decalcomania or Decalcomania. So I'm going to just run through the materials that you're going to need. What I'm going to demo with is just an ordinary poster paint, but I have tried with acrylic and with watercolor and also with a block printing ink. They do work. Each paint has a different consistency and therefore gives a slightly different result. So bottom line is just use whatever you have. Have some paint brushes available, a jar of water, a laundry spray is useful. A roller can be useful, but if you don't have a roller, you can either use the heel of your hand or maybe even an old roll of something that you just roll across. I have a piece of cling wrap, which is a possibility, it's not imperative. And what we're going to use mainly is this piece of acetate. A bunch of papers, a hairdryer, and I've even cut out some magazine images that are fairly bland, that could be used to print on. So most of the time when we do printmaking, we talk about using very absorbent paper. But in this instance, it helps to have something with a little bit of a shine on it, so that it isn't too porous. Yeah, and then there's a little dish here to mix the paint with. You can also use a saucer. This one is nice because it has different pockets for different colors. So let me just start. I'm going to take a dark color, navy blue, and just put some in here and mix it with a bit of water. So it is quite important to get the paint not too thick, not too wet. And you can always adjust it by spraying more water onto the plate. So here I have a piece of glass. I forgot to mention that. Piece of glass to use as a plate. But if you don't have one, I could have used this table that's covered in white plastic and just worked directly onto here. This is nice. The glass is nice because it doesn't move. So let me start with the very basic Decalcomania that you would have done maybe as a child in kindergarten, which was putting paint on a piece of paper and then folding it in half. It's the ink blot that we're very familiar with. So the ink blot technique became quite a thing, and in the early 1900s, 1922 or so, there was a Swiss psychoanalyst who decided to use the ink blots as a way of finding out what his patients were thinking, or as a diagnostic tool. So he developed 10 different ink blots, and then his patients would have to read into them and see, one person might see a face, another person might see a monster or whatever. So I don't know how reliable that method was, but it did become a big psychoanalytic tool. And let me just show you. So I just tore off the back of a cover of a pad because it's quite shiny, the paper. So I'm just going to, you could fold it this way or that way. I'm going to do the long way. and I'm just going to put a little bit of paint here and fold it down, and then pull it, and it makes these beautiful pull marks. And then I could decide to go again, maybe even adding a more watery little blot there, and then you can make movements with your fingers, which might translate into a more interesting mark. So it's always a surprise when it opens what it's going to look like. This is quite wet now. If I wanted to soften this area, I could put some plain water here. I could spray it on actually. Well, that didn't really make any difference at all, but this did spread upwards. I think the paint that I used is a little bit too thick. I think maybe we should do this again. I could add another colour, maybe make it a bit more watery. Just add a little bit here, a little bit there. So that's added something. And I could just do another little bit. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Okay, let's do one that's done directly on the plate. So I hope this paint is the right runniness. So I'm just going to put some onto the glass. Then I'm going to take this piece of acetate and lay it on top, and use the roller to spread it. And if you don't have a roller, you can use this, or if you don't have any of that, you can just use the heel of your hand. So the irregularity of it is part of the beauty. So I just want to show you what happens when you take the plastic and you pull it. Can you see that it's leaving a little line wherever I stop? So I pull and I stop, and I pull and I stop. And it makes these very nice little tide marks, which will show up like drawings. Then, when I pull, there's also these marks. I can see that this is quite watery, so it's going to make a different kind of mark. And the marks follow the direction of the pull. So, can you see that the lines are moving in relation to the direction of the pull? So this came out as a kind of ripply, quite a wet ripply mark. And then what you can do is take a piece of paper and pull a print. Now this is quite watery, So I'm not going to squash it down or rub it hard. I'm just literally going to lay it down and just very, very, very lightly stroke the page and even peep to see what's happened underneath. And you get this very beautiful print that might ignite the imagination, and you might find that you want to draw into it or put color into it. It might become a landscape, or it might become the flounce of someone's dress, or whatever it is. So that gives you some idea. So now I think the paint was a little bit runny, so I'm going to take a little bit more and put it on here, maybe directly from. It's very hit and miss, so that's the whole beauty of it. You will get to know, you'll play. It's very much about experimenting. So you see, now we're getting more pull marks, which are quite nice. So if every time I stop, I'm making a ripple mark, you see that? And when it goes down, it flattens it out again. So you can direct the page and make the pull marks go in a particular direction, but you have to keep on lifting the rest of the page so it doesn't lie down. So that's quite nice as well. So I'm not going to pull a print, but you do get the idea. I'm just going to carry on going to show you another little trick. So that's quite nice, that little air bubble. So when I pull both ends, both sides, it pulls the paint in the middle. And then when I lift, it will make that dark space. Another thing to do would be to pull and turn. So that is a more kind of unpredictable organic shape that is wonderful. The more complex the shape, the more it ignites the imagination. So shall I pull a print here so that we know what kind of effect? Very lightly. The paint I've put down is fairly wet. So that's that. And then I can keep on just going. There's less paint now because I pulled some off. And obviously you could add other colors. I'm just showing you with one color. I think dark colors work the best. What I'm going to try and do now is maybe stop talking. I'm going to try and use a magazine image to print on. So this is fairly plain, but it's also quite sort of painterly. It's just a landscape with clouds. As I say, it's hit and miss, and it's quite exciting because you don't know what's going to appear. So that's quite pretty there with the light background and the marks. And then you can maybe work into that afterwards once it's dried. And that's why I have the hairdryer here, which I'm not going to demonstrate, to dry your prints a bit faster so you can work into them. So I think that gives you the basics. That gives you the idea of how ridiculously easy and unpredictable, exciting Decalcomania is. Okay. Another thing you can do is to put some paint on the plate and then take a piece of cling wrap or cellophane paper or any other paper, and let's spread it a bit first, and then you can crumple it, and then when you pull it, it leaves a different kind of pattern. And then you can pull a print. Which is a bit of both. It's a bit of the crumple and a bit of the pull.